Well, hello there. Good evening and welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed, standing in for your regular host, Suleiman. On the program today, we're going to discuss an all too familiar issue that continues to grab the imagination and the attention of the world. As the death toll continues to rise, the world continues to debate the best way forward to bring an end to the Israeli-Hamas war in Gaza that is killing thousands of people. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman recently said Israel's actions and siege of Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza amounts to a war crime. A spokesperson for Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthi military says the group will target all ships owned or operated by Israeli companies or carrying the Israeli flag. The Committee to Protect Journalists reported on Saturday that the total number of journalists who have died since the war started now amounts to 42. With two more deaths, reporters who lost their lives during the conflict include 39 Palestinians, 4 Israelis and 1 Lebanese. This war has seen more reporters killed in its first month than any other conflict since the CPJ first started collating statistics for journalists covering the conflict in 1992. On the program today, we will be dissecting and interrogating some of the issues that have been discussed today and look at what perhaps may look like a solution going forward. Joining me on the program, Ansri Ajanuku, a public affairs analyst, and Muhammad Kumo, who is a political affairs analyst and a businessman. Gentlemen, good evening to both of you, and thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Good evening.
Now, since this the recent crisis between Israel and Hamas started, everyone seems to have an opinion about what is going on. It is a crisis that has caught the imagination of a lot of people, in Africa, largely because of ethno-religious connections. For instance, in the West, there's also different dimensions to it. Like so many other issues in the world, it is one that has polarized viewpoints. People see it differently, people interpret the actions of Israel differently, the actions of Hamas differently. Let's talk about the human indifference to what is happening right now. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Amsri. Give me your take on why, for the past 1 month, we have not been able to see the world come together to bring this, catastrophe to an end.
Well, first of all, I would say that if you look at, I think it was Shakespeare that said, all is fair in love and war. But we can argue unequivocally that the scale of human lives that we have seen decimated and destroyed, this is not fair to humanity. This is really very tragic for any argument for humanity. You can't be talking about 4,000 children dead, on the Palestinian side. You also talk about the people who were also killed on the Israeli side. This conflict absolutely has, for me, has shown that if we cannot build understanding, if we cannot build dialogue, if we cannot resolve issues, then it's always going to be dangerous and a threat, to our humanity collectively. But having said that, I think we should look forward to institutions like the UN to be a lot more proactive and a lot more effective in terms of issues around conflict resolutions like this. But so far, I would say that the UN has actually not delivered in terms of being able, for example, to create a situation where we have a ceasefire, a humanitarian corridor. We know there have been efforts towards that, but we are not yet seeing, the humanitarian corridor. You just have, some tokenistic approach to saying, okay, maybe some trucks of aid can go into those places where the conflict, is happening. But in terms of having an effective way in which you deter or you compel some of the parties to come to the negotiating table and put a halt to the loss of lives. We have not seen that. And in that sense, I think the UN system would need to up its game such that we have a reduction in the, or a total seizure in terms of the losses in lives that we have seen in this conflict.
For some, the UN has used all diplomatic means, language, to a point where even Israel is accusing the United Nations Secretary General of, blaming it for what's going on right now because of his criticism of what Israel through the IDF is doing regarding the death toll and the destruction in Gaza. Give me a sense of why it is apparently becoming difficult to achieve ceasefire at this point. I mean, this is not the first time this sort of situation is happening in that particular region. Why does it look like, the solution is eluding all of the conversations we're having? Because you hear humanitarian corridor, just as Mr. Ajanuku just stated, that is all they can hope for, a corridor, a window for civilians to move out of location A or B, but nobody's talking about a ceasefire.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the main issue for all these things, the inability of the UN or anybody else to do something positive, honestly, I think is the sheer one-sidedness of all these international organizations, especially the major ones like the United Nations, and the hypocrisy of the EU and others like that. As you mentioned, you said Israel was even threatening the United Nations. At a point, it said it declared the UN Secretary General persona non grata, something like that, and said all UN officers would be thrown out, just because the UN was trying to look like it was being neutral. There is a great deal of one-sidedness in the activities of the United Nations, from the operations of the Security Council, and there are many resolutions. The General Assembly have passed many resolutions in the past that have been overlooked. And if you look at most of the conflicts in the world, you will find that if you have the backing of America and any of the great powers, you can do what you like Israel has been doing throughout the 75 years of its existence. Great brazenness, impunity, and all that. So the thing is, really, they have to look at the operations of the United Nations, how decisions are made, and possibly we need some other fora, because we have seen for a very long time that the United Nations really, and coming to think of it, even maybe economic institutions like the World Bank, IMF, you see that there's a great deal of one-sidedness and lopsidedness. The way they treat us when we have economic problems is different from the way they treat other advanced countries and all that. So there is, the bottom line is that there is a lot of hypocrisy and posturing.
I mean, you talk about hypocrisy quite a lot in your analysis. Give me your version of how the international community should look at this particular issue.
Well, the international community has been, how do I say, derelict or lax for a very long time that the Israeli-Palestine issue reached this stage. Israel has been doing what it liked from the get-go. After all, Israel started its existence by assassinating Count Folk Bernadotte, who went there to try and find a formula where the Arabs and the Israelis could live in peace, when Britain pulled out from there and it became a UN mandate territory. You find that a lot of the Israeli leaders were well-known terrorists, like Yitzhak Shamir, Menachem Begin. In fact, Yitzhak Shamir never hid it. He used to openly describe himself as a terrorist, but they got honored. Freedom fighters, on the other hand, look at what happened to Yasser Arafat. They kept pushing him to a minimalist level of demand. He accepted everything, yet they kept infringing on their rights. They kept...
You're talking about the Oslo Accords?
Yeah. Right. Even before the Oslo Accords, they were freedom, they were fighting with violence. They said they had renounced violence. What happened? Things kept on getting worse for them. What happened just before this eruption of 7th October? Before 7th October, more Palestinians in the West Bank were killed this year than in any other year. There have been raids in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and all kinds of things were happening, nobody was talking. It is because of the failure of the United Nations and all these bodies that this thing happened in the first place. The people have lost hope. So,
yeah. And in looking at the reactions from October 7th, when Hamas attacked Israel, killing many, abducting others, and we get to talk about the hostage situation and how perhaps it could present a low-hanging fruit for negotiations going forward. How would you weigh the reaction of the world in terms of support, in terms of condemnation, because we've had a great deal of those: support, condemnation, suggestions and recommendations in going forward, and we've also seen a pivot even from the United States, where at first it was talking about Israel having a right to defend itself, to there are certain thresholds that you cannot cross. There are certain considerations that have to be put in place to ensure that women and children are not victims of collateral damage in your efforts to retaliate. Give me a sense of whether there is some sort of control over this particular situation, and why we are where we are today.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say there's a form of control that has given us the right outcomes. The right outcomes in terms of mitigating this very unacceptable level of losses in human lives. Maybe human life has become so devalued in our estimation, not all over the world, and we are not really outraged. It's like, across the world, there's a certain level of desensitization to the fact that you cannot decimate, or you should not decimate human being, even if you're talking about just one person, talk less of the thousands that we have seen, being sent out of this world in, a very gruesome, very violent manner, bombs being dropped. We've also seen situations in which hospitals, who should be safe havens, are being attacked. We're seeing refugee camps, places where people are trying to go and take refuge away from the conflict. Even the laws of war would not countenance the kinds of situation we have seen in the course of this conflict. And the other dimension of it is when you talk about the primacy of human life, the fact that we should safeguard human life. Some people will say you are pacifist. You don't understand that this is a war. In war, naturally, people have to die. But do people really have to die if parties can come together? For example, there's the two-state solution.
Right.
What has happened to that whole discussion in which, even if we say today that, okay, Israel has a right to exist in that, is there a commensurate, a reciprocal measure to say, okay, the Palestinians also have a right, and if you see the fact that Gaza has been described as the largest open-air prison, in the world, and all the issues that come with it that have fed into this crisis. So the reality is that it's not headed in the right direction, and the world needs to reset. Several organizations that I'm affiliated to, for example, have called for ceasefire. But how do we take it beyond moral suasion to the point that all of the parties are willing? And let's not make any mistake. Any party to this conflict that says might is right, that says, oh, we can bulldoze our way through, we can take over territories and all of that, that cannot be the right approach to doing this. And I think collectively, as human beings across the world, wherever people are located in the world, we should be able to speak up to say this is not right.
This is the rhetoric around this particular recent conflict adding fuel to the fire, especially if you look at the divide from the west to the east to here on the African continent. Do you think this divide is making it hard for people to really speak with one voice in unison to say enough is enough, and this massacre, this genocide, whatever is going on right now, however people describe it, needs to stop?
Absolutely. And this conflict is happening side by side with the Russian Ukrainian conflict.
Right.
And if you look at the basis or the narrative or the thinking that has fueled the intervention or the role of a country like the United States in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the narrative is markedly different from how it has also approached. And whether I would like it or not, US is a world leader that should play a very significant role in the de-escalation of conflicts like this. And so part of this narrative you are also seeing is the fact that some people see you respond to a particular conflict in a certain way and talk about...
Does that speak to the hypocrisy or the double standard that
yes,
was talking about
absolutely.
earlier? Right.
That double standard is there.
Right.
But I don't think we should dwell on blame. We should be more concerned about the kind of advocacy that would bring people together to say we can have a handle on this, we can find a solution, even if it's just to stop the loss of lives. In the first place, that is a critical thing to do at this time. And when you do that, we can now sit down and dust up. There are several agreements that can provide the basis for these conflicts to be resolved, and we can, all the sides can then leverage on that.
Obviously, the only way to get to a ceasefire at this point is not going nuclear. It's not going to be a military action that would deter Israel to withdraw or to stop the bombardments and things like it. It has to be something diplomatic, something political, something that involves its big brother, the United States, and all the other bigger world powers in the EU, for instance. Give me a sense of what it will take for them to pivot. We've seen them make statements that look like, caution for Israel to steer clear of any sort of reoccupation, whether it's in the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip and things like that, negotiating for hours of those humanitarian corridors to allow people to move out of certain hostile territories, even though there are reports that even people that have been urged to leave are still being attacked on their way out of some of those flashpoints. Give me a sense of what it would take for these countries that have some sort of influence on what Israel does militarily, what it would take for them to pivot to call for a ceasefire. Because they don't appear to be shifting in that direction. Yes,
thank you. I think I like something that Mr. Armstrong said when he said there needs to be a reset. There needs to be a reset. We'll look at it, this thing differently and not just to follow the usual narrative. Another thing is that, as he was saying, that there's this public opinion thing. The public opinion is getting stronger and stronger and stronger against the Israelis, despite all their media power, the media power that they deploy is going against them and the American establishment, let me put it.
Does public opinion in a situation like this count? Because, I've seen this play out for over the past 2 decades since I can recall.
Yes.
And public opinion still remains the same.
Yes, I'm coming to why I brought that. You see, the thing is, as he said, we needed a reset. What I'm saying is, since you're talking about diplomatic initiatives and all that, and hopefully that's what should be the best option, instead of others going to join the fight. I think another thing is, you can see many countries are cutting off, some have outright cut off diplomatic relations with Israel, others are withdrawing all their embassy staff. I think we should see more of that. On the other hand, I think all those countries should make a strong effort to involve other strong powers like maybe China and Russia and all that, to go and put serious pressure on America and do other things to make America really breathe down the neck of Israel and force them.
Yeah, but where's the leverage to do that? Because you're not going to go cap in hand and say, please ask them to stop this.
That's why I'm saying more diplomatic pressure, and then the involvement of those people like who have certain leverage, like economic or whatever, with China and the rest, to make a great deal of pressure on America. economic, diplomatic and all that, so that they will see that they have a great deal to lose. And also the public opinion thing is building more and more. But I think just to wait for the United Nations and America to do that, and Europe just like that to appeal to their consciences or all that, will not get us anywhere, as we have seen.
Right. If we just take a look back at recent history, right? A couple of years down the line, something like this has happened. You know, if you go down again, it has happened before. A couple of times, you know, more, 3 decades ago. Give me a sense of what we can learn from the history of this conflict between Israel and Palestine, and what is likely going to take for a ceasefire to happen and for some sort of normalization to happen to restore the lives that have been disrupted, and you know, perhaps see a reestablishment of peace in that region.
So I think I was reading an opinion piece in the New York Times, and one of the points that was made in that piece was the fact that this conflict, you know, didn't start last month. It's not on October 17th.
Yeah. It's a continuation.
Yes, a continuation of decades of upheavals, decades of conflict, of killings, of you know, trying to negotiate, you know, of a lot, as you know, it said, a lot of issues have dovetailed to this point. Having said that, I think one of the lessons that should be learned is that you may have the approach of might is right, but might cannot and will not resolve a conflict like this. And this message is on both sides. And we must be very nuanced in also separating the role of the state and the role of society. Why I say that is that the state can sometimes say it's acting on behalf of everybody, but in reality it's acting on behalf of a narrower interest that does not reflect, you know, in the interest of, you know, on the interest of everybody. I say that because you see some of those people that Hamas captured, killed, you know, took them hostages and all of that. They are just innocent people who are citizens of Israel who want to live their lives. Also, the same thing with the thousands that have been killed on the Palestinian side. Do they all necessarily support, you know, the position of Hamas? So that's where we have to distinguish between that. And I think when you ask the question that how can we begin to get that leverage, how can we, I think it's the voices of those everyday people that matter in an issue like this. We need to find a way for all of those people to raise their voices. We've seen, you know, in the United States, even some people of Jewish extraction saying, "Not in our name." We need more of those voices. So across the board.
But like you said, is the state going to listen? I mean, you hear the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say, you know, there's no possibility of a full ceasefire. So it's you know, full steam ahead as far as Israel is concerned, as far as the government of Israel is concerned.
Yes, and
regardless of what its people think.
Yes, that is where also the pressure from some accountability institutions would also have to come in, because there are some institutions who are already warning that you could be appearing before the International Criminal Court. There could be accountability, even though you may say they may not be signatory to maybe the Rome Statute or anything. You may not be able to hold them accountable. Even the US is not signatory to some of those things. But that threat capability to say what you are doing is against all known norms that, you know, puts primacy on life. Right. You can't now you see this whole discussion around should it be a collective punishment? If you've identified that, okay, this is a particular group you have an issue with, why not implement your strategy in a way that targets that group? But you cannot lump all civilians together with everybody and you decimate everybody.
The explanation,
if I may add something, you know, I think it's today or yesterday, an Israeli-owned ship, something like that, was hijacked by the Houthis in Yemen, the Bab and Mandeb Strait. Now, that ship had taken goods, I think, from Turkey, taking it to India. This is a kind of escalation. So now, you see, when you have problem, it can affect everybody. The kind of thing I'm saying that those countries should form another bloc also to put great pressure on America, because Israel is used to brazen impunity. That's why Netanyahu is speaking as he likes, saying all the things they like, and the American establishment. Now, what this Houthi thing has shown is that it can affect everybody. So countries like Turkey, India, and maybe the Arab countries, who should be the primary people to do this kind of thing, should have put in a lot of pressure, because slowly it will engulf everybody.
Right. And that, I think, is, where this whole conversation is leading towards, where people worry about, the worst case scenario. And we've seen so many world leaders talk about how this could, potentially lead us to another world war, because there's every chance that if the powers that be within that particular region decide to take up arms against Israel, you might see America get dragged into it. You might see, European powers get dragged into it, and then we could be dealing with another world war on our hands. But looking at the carrot and stick approach, I mean, Amsri just talked about the ICC there, and this past week, South Africa, alongside other countries, 6 other countries, just referred the development in Gaza. They referred Israel to the International Criminal Court. Give me a sense of what you think actions like that could do to prevail on the thinking of Israel. Or do you think that if they have Big Brother America on their back, they don't care what everybody else thinks?
Yeah, I believe that as long as they have American backing, it's very obvious. It's been shown time without number. They don't care a hoot what everybody says. They do things brazenly. They just chase people out of a hospital. They are now turning the hospital into an Al-Shifa. Sick people, everything, after failing to produce evidence of any military headquarters.
Well, they actually, according to BBC's reporting, they say that Israel has released footage which shows a 55-meter long terror tunnel. That's how Israel described it, 10 meters deep underneath at the Al-Shifa hospital. They say it proves why they had to attack it, because there is Hamas operatives there.
Well, they have said many things, many times, that, for example, even the number of dead have been reduced. We just heard today from Israeli police sources that a lot of the dead, after reducing from 1,400 to 1,200, a lot of them were actually killed by Israeli helicopters. This is from Israeli sources. And another thing, by the laws of war and all that, I had some experts discussing it. Even if you have military headquarters, which is yet to be proved, and we know Israel is not someone anybody can trust. They have brought many kinds of information. The same thing, they showed a roster showing this and said these were the names of Hamas fighters, many things like that. They have no right to go and occupy a hospital and chase out. After all, there was no fighting coming out of there and all that. Of what value is it? I think they're just doing another Nakba, because one of their ministers, I think it was Rev Gallant, said they were going to cut off electricity, no power, no water, no fuel, even fuel for the hospitals to operate. You can see the level they are going to. So what I'm saying is that they are used to this impunity, and they will not do anything unless America forces them to do. And the thing is to put pressure on America to see that it's got a lot to lose in many places if it doesn't train in Israel. And then another thing, it's well known that justice is an absolute value. Many people, if there's injustice, they don't want peace anymore. So whatever the people should do, all these bodies, they should strive to achieve a modicum of justice, and then you can hope for some peace.
Right. And I must say that as much as there is international polarization about this particular issue, even in America, the conversation is also polarized between support for Israel and, of course, support for Palestine. And perhaps that is a true picture of how complicated the issue is. Well, we're going to take a moment's break. When we come back, there's a lot more issues to digest and to interrogate with my guests here in the studio. And also, we get to give you an opportunity to weigh in, to give us your thoughts. If you have questions for my guests to answer, feel free to be a part of the conversation. Join us after the break for more on Sunday Politics. And we're back on Sunday Politics live on Trust TV. The conversation is on the Israel-Palestine war. The death toll continues to rise. Thousands have been killed so far, and you can imagine that if a ceasefire is not achieved in the coming days, thousands more will continue to die as Israel doubled down on its hunt for Hamas operations in Gaza and, of course, some of its operations across the West Bank. It is a conversation that has an international dimension, and of course, the rest of the world is talking about what is happening in that region. We'd like you to join the conversation. If you can, feel free to add your voice to the conversation this evening by giving us a call on the number showing on your TV screen. Rules of engagement: please turn down the volume of your TV set. Be as civil as you can with regards to your thoughts, and also keep it short and simple. I've been in conversation with Amsri and Alhaji Mohammed Kumo, who have been giving us their perspective on some of these developing issues. Now, there's a lot to go by regarding the reports that we've been hearing from the World Health Organization, the United Nations agencies, whether it's the World Health Organization, all these other groups that are embedded in this humanitarian crisis, giving us different reports. And I must say that all the reports are tilting in one direction, that it is a disproportionate tally when you look at what has happened to Israelis on October 7 and what is happening to Palestinians right now and going into the days and weeks ahead. How do you explain it in a way that it doesn't look like you're taking sides here? And of course, is the whole issue around taking sides also not helping us reach some sort of solution? Because it looks like the moment you speak and you condemn one person, you're classified as being on the side of A or B.
Absolutely, that's the dilemma that even we in Nigeria we have, because our own society is a very diverse society, diverse, multi-religious.
I'm sorry. Just hold your thought for a moment. There, we have a caller on the line. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. Your name and where you're calling from, please.
Yeah, my name is Aliu Shamaki from Nasarawa State.
Aliu Shamaki, good to hear from you this evening. Go ahead.
Yeah, once again, good evening, Abdullah Ahmad and the two gentlemen in the studio. Yeah, on the issue of Israel-Palestine, this issue is sympathetic and unfortunate. We thought the war only Russia and Ukraine, but the Israel and Palestine doubled the one we've seen from the Russia and Ukraine. Where are the United Nations? Where are our leaders and the world? Is that how they will fold their hands seeing this ugly situation going on? So something needs to be done, please. In fact, the worst part is the attack that was launched in the biggest hospital in Gaza. So many lives were lost, including the children. So Israel should watch what they are doing. Innocent people are just killing for nothing, just like that. So something needs to be done on this issue. So this is my take.
Thank you very much, Shamaki, for the call, and we do appreciate you for calling in. Continue with your line of thought, but if you can also link it to what Shamaki is talking about. But there is a response to that. Israel has always said, listen, we're just responding. We're not the instigators here. How do you square this cycle?
Yes, because you see, when it comes to how do we analyze in a way that we don't take sides? We have to talk about how we put humanity first. That, because I don't know, some people have become so inured to anything when you say humanity, put lives first and all of that. All lives matter, which is a position I think we should put for. The moment we say every life matters, whether you're a Palestinian, whether you are from Israel, I think that sufficiently brings us to a point where all parties can now talk about how do we solve this. Because if this fighting continues from now, God forbid, another 10 years, they are still going to come back to the negotiating table. In conflict, you have to always think about the fact that there has to be a return to the negotiating table to sort out the issues that the bombs and the bullets are being used to talk about. Now, there still has to be some form of dialogue to resolve them. Having said that, I think Nigeria has actually done something commendable in terms of finding a very nuanced way to engage the issue. Recently, when the Nigerian foreign minister met with the Palestinian ambassador, he again raised the issue of the two-state solution. The two-state solution that guarantees the rights of the people of, because like my colleague was talking about, the fact that if you don't have justice, then you cannot talk about peace.
Right. But if you talk about that, the two-state solution has been bandied about for as long as I can remember. I think even before I was born. I mean, from the get-go, it was supposed to be two states, one for the Israelis, one for the Palestinians. Somehow Israel got their state, and the Palestinians are still, struggling to get there. How do you make sense of all this talk, the diplomatic, negotiations, the middlemen like Qatar that are, there to negotiate hostages being released and things like that, and why that is not looking likely to give us the two-state solution that is supposed to lower the temperature in that region?
I think, honestly speaking, you cannot really make much sense of, if you are being honest, there isn't much sense in what they're talking. I respect the Qataris. They're doing a good job by at least maintaining contact between the two sides. They're one of the few Arab countries, I think, playing a good role. And then by having Al Jazeera, which without Al Jazeera, we wouldn't have known
the full scale?
A fraction of what we have known now. We have to commend the Qataris. But the thing is, anybody talking about there's a lot of cynicism involved in all this talk of a two-state solution. The Israelis have been sabotaging the two-state solution from the get-go. I told you they kicked off their existence by assassinating Folk Panadot, who was trying to find, from the get-go, trying to find a reasonable settlement so that the Arabs and the Israelis would live in peace. And they have continued since then. Even now, there's the West Bank, there are settlements all over. It's part of the thing, one of the things that made the Hamas to attack on 7th October, because their rights were being abused more and more and more. There were more settlements, more attacks, all kinds of things were being done. It didn't just happen like that. They didn't just wake up one day and decide to attack. Life was getting very, very unbearable. And another thing, when people keep saying you should be fair, balanced, you shouldn't support any side, I think if you're going to be fair and just in this region, I think there is a side to blame and there is a side that's a victim. After all, when there were negotiations in South Africa to abolish apartheid, everybody knew who were the bad guys, and everybody knew Mandela, who was previously referred to as a terrorist, was the one who was the freedom fighter. So the world should cut out the cynicism and try and be honest and find a kind of just solution. If not, this thing will keep going on. And those who are watching thinking it won't affect them, as I said, there's an example of the seizure of the ship today. It was carrying goods from Turkey to India, stopped in Yemen. Anything can affect anybody.
And in talking about the repercussions or the implications or the effect that this is going to have, I mean, we saw with the Russia-Ukraine war, leading to the energy crisis, right? Gas prices just shot up, especially in Europe. Wheat production, the supply chain got completely disrupted. Even with the current conflict, and when it started, price of crude oil went up by a couple of dollars, even though it's marginally stabilized now. But give me, the worst case scenario here, because it looks like there's a lot of talking, but the main actors in this theater are not necessarily sheathing their sword. What is the worst case scenario here, and what are the options before global powers to make sure that this doesn't escalate to what we've been dreading for so long, which is another world war?
Yes, I think the worst case scenario is some catastrophic scenario of mutually assured destruction. And it's not something that,
like with the Houthis and others
exactly.
getting into the action.
Not just the Houthis. No. There's also interest in Iraq, affiliated to the Iranians, who
Hezbollah is there.
Exactly, Hezbollah is there. The U.S. had to also move some warships in a show of force to say certain interests should keep off the conflict. But you see all this movement, and you know that this does not bode well for any of the powers, and which is why, again, a lot rests on the table of the United States, given the role it has played in this conflict over the decades, and given the fact that even under the Trump presidency, the embassy of the U.S. was relocated from Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem, in a move that ratcheted up the tension. So, some of the fruits of those actions, there are some of the things we are seeing today that, instead of de-escalating and providing a pathway for peace and for the conflicts to be discussed, in a way that brings solution, rather the tension has been raised. So if you look at the worst case scenario, it does not bode well for everybody. And for me, the most critical thing is the question of how sacred human lives are. The thousands of lives that have been lost, those people had dreams, they had plans, they had contributions to make to our collective humanity. And then we cannot have a situation in which the killings just go on endlessly. And to the point that Mohammed made about let's focus on one side is disproportionately responsible for the carnage we're seeing. I would say again, and I go back to that issue of the state and the society. The woman in Israel, or the ordinary person that was observing, the holiday, trying to enjoy themselves during a holiday, that gets killed. If that person was to be asked, you understand, do you support what is going on? They may likely not support. So we should be able to distinguish. That's why we have to go beyond the fixation on one side and look at it across the board, because there's some people who may not have the power to speak up, to stop what the Israeli state is doing, but they are caught up in this situation. So they are also as important as also the thousands on the other side that have also lost their lives. He said when two elephants fight, there are many people, on the downside that may not have what it takes to stop those people from fighting. Except that
a lot of people would not classify Israel and Hamas as two elephants. Maybe one is an elephant, the one is likely a cat or something like that. Maybe an annoying cat. But they're not of equal strength,
absolutely,
are they?
Absolutely.
And another thing also, what he says is quite right. Maybe you insulate ordinary citizens from what is happening from the actions of their government. But the thing is, we haven't seen so many demonstrations in Israel saying that the rights of Palestinians should be respected. For example, when America was fighting the Vietnam War, there were a lot of demonstrations in America saying that they shouldn't be fighting the war, go to other people's lands and all that. And there are some things like that about fighting in Iraq and all that. And I think I agree with you. Yeah, people are innocent, but the Palestinians were there in their land. Their forefathers were there. Some of them were chased out and are living as refugees. Most of the people in Gaza were not from Gaza originally. They were from different parts of Israel, and they ended up as refugees in Gaza. What about those people who are in Israel? They came from all over the world, from Poland, from Russia, from America, and they were told to come. They knew it was somebody else's land that was taken from someone else and given to them. So as much as you should insulate them, it should be up to a point. And if you want to insulate, they should be more proactive. And good to say there are one or two Israelis and even Jewish rabbis, the truly religious Jews, who condemn all these atrocities. There are people like, I think, Gideon Levy and people like that who are against the Zionists, for example, who say that the Zionists do not represent the Jews, they are an aberration in the Jewish religion and all that. It's a good thing this Hamas attack has brought some of them to come out to be saying that, so we know that it's not all the Jews that are really Zionists. Right. But anybody who is a Zionist cannot escape blame for this. It's just like being in South Africa before Mandela's time, when during the apartheid, and you know, you say you're a Boer, what do you believe in apartheid, but the blacks should have better rights. I mean, it's something like that.
Right. It's almost
and also about paradox. This thing about life.
Let's just talk to this caller because we're running short of time. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. Your name, please, and where you're calling from. Hello, good evening. Okay, it appears we've lost our connection to that caller. We have 2 minutes or more to spare, so feel free to try again. The number is on your screen. And in talking about, you know, what comes next, Israel just approved, it announced a couple of hours ago, the continuation of ground combat and maneuvering in the Gaza Strip. Now, it is unclear whether this new Israeli Gaza operations will expand to the south, but we also understand that people in the southern part of Gaza have been given a clear message: leave before the Israelis show up. So it's very clear that we're most likely not even halfway through what is going on right now, and the world is watching. 14,000 plus dead on both sides and counting. 1,200 plus on the Israeli side, 13,000 plus on the Palestinian side, and counting. I mean, these figures, we're talking about people, a significant part of them women and children. I mean, what do you say about the human indifference of how the world, as angry as we appear to be about what's happening, but we're still able to condone this or sit and watch as this continues to happen?
Yes, so it's a collective stain on, you know, the conscience of all humanity, and I'll keep drumming it that whatever other consideration, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, whatever other consideration, the first priority of the entire humanity, the first priority that the US should be talking about now is not any strategic calculation. End this bleeding now. You understand? That is the demand of every well-meaning person everywhere in the world that believes that if humanity is important, this is where we should channel our efforts towards. And a lot of this responsibility is falling on the shoulders of the United States because the US at the start of the war endorsed what it referred to as Israel's rights to self-defense. But in that endorsement, it did not talk about the fact that innocent people will be targeted. So Israel currently is operating in a mode of collective punishment.
All right. Okay. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it here for now, gentlemen. As we all analyze, do you want to say a brief word?
Yeah, if I may add quickly. You know, what is happening has been said by many experts, have termed it explicitly as genocide. The intent has been supplied by the utterances of Israeli ministers severally. An official of the United Nations human rights thing, one Craig Moshiba, resigned because he said what is happening is genocide, and the relevant organizations and in the United Nations and so on are not doing anything about it. Most of the officers, like Martin Griffiths and all that, they're saying this. But so the basic thing is that Israel has a license from America to act with impunity, brazen impunity, to do what it likes, and unless others come in, this issue. And when you talk about the worst case scenario, the worst case scenario is worst case. Nobody can predict it, but it's really going to be really bad.
For everyone, I suppose.
For everyone.
All right, okay.
May God forbid.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for the analysis. We're going to have to leave it here for now. There's going to be a lot more to unpack, especially as this crisis continues to unfold. Mohammed Kumo, Amsfri Ajanku, thank you most kindly for joining us on Sunday Politics this evening. I appreciate your thoughts and expertise.
Thank you. Anything.
And this is where we draw the curtains on today's and this week's edition of Sunday Politics. Thank you most kindly for your time and company. And for those of you who tried calling in and couldn't get through, we appreciate you for joining us either way. We're going to have to leave it here for now. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. From myself and the rest of the team, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.